Hey, what's going on everybody? On today's project, I'm going to show you how I built this DIY wire railing. And if you like this video and subscribe to my channel, I'll show you how to adjust the tension so it sounds like this. Let's get into the video. So here's a quick look at where this project started. We didn't have any of the railing posts in place, and I wanted to take some time just to show you how we got those established. So based on a railing spacing of around 3.5 feet, we established where each post was going to go, and then what we needed to do for this picture frame edging was do a little bit of cutting into the existing boards so that when we put the edge cap on, it would fully encapsulate the board and also have about, a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch of overhang over the deck. So here I am showing you how I cut that out. I just used a jigsaw and it was pretty easy there. And then once we had the jigsaw cut out, we would go ahead and insert the post there. So we pre-painted all of our posts black to make it easier for us. And then we set the height of the first post and then use it as a reference to establish the level for all the rest. So here I was just doing some fine tuning, making sure that we're at the same height above. And then to secure the actual post to the deck, we use ledger lock screws, which don't require any pre-drilling. So you see me drilling in there, and there's an end cap that you thread on the opposite side, and then you just go back to your drill, and it basically self-tightens on itself. And so far, it seems to be a very durable installation procedure. So here I am showing you that we have all of the posts installed at this point. We put some blocking in on both sides before putting the post in and then securing it with 2 ledger lock screws per post. And then what you'll see in the corner here is we actually did 2 posts, and this is going to make it easier when we install the wire railing because it'll be straight drills through both posts instead of doing anything at an angle. And you'll see what I mean when we get into the rail part of this installation. Once we had all the posts in place, we established the top rail using 2 2x4s, and then we mounted Trex as the railing top. So in order to actually drill the holes through the post, what we did is we created a template using a spare 2x4. And because we're using 1/8 inch cable, we drilled 1/4 inch holes directly in the center of the 2x4, spaced about every 3¼ inches. And the reason for that spacing is because there's code requirements saying a 4-inch sphere cannot pass in between the cables, and also a 6-inch sphere cannot pass at the bottom of the stairs. So once we had our template created, we went and we marked the actual posts, and I decided to use a screwdriver and a hammer to do this, to actually leave an imprint in the post. That way it was easier to drill into the post later without the bit wandering around. So what I'm showing you here are the marks on one side of the post. What you're going to do is then flip your template around to the other side of the post and mark both sides. And the reason we're marking both sides is because we actually found that the best way to drill through this post was to drill halfway through on one side and then meet halfway in the middle, if you will, by drilling in through the other side. And we tried some of the fancy methods. I actually bought one of these fancy, hole drill sets where it, is supposed to keep your drill bit straight all the way through. But we really found that going halfway through on one side and then meeting in the middle of the post was the best way to prevent any kind of wood breakout by going all the way through, and also ensure that you're going straight through the post. And you can kind of make any adjustments in the middle where no one can see it. So this was a lot of drilling. Again, we're using a 1/4 inch bit. And we went through one side and then switched and went through the other side, meeting in the middle for every single post. And this is very redundant. You're going to be doing a lot of drilling, so put in a podcast and enjoy the ride. For the corner post where we couldn't get both sides, we did have to use a longer bit and just drill all the way through. So at this point, we had most of our main post drilled through, but we had to do a little bit of creative thinking on the stairs. Because this hardware is a little expensive, we were trying to minimize the amount of hardware used by just doing one straight run. So we had to do some thinking about what we're going to do on the actual angle of the stairs. So the way we did this is we took a 2x4 and we matched the angle of the top cap. And once we had that angle established, we marked it with a Sharpie and then used it to basically have parallel angles all the way down the staircase there. So once that angle was established, we matched the 2x4 up with where we made the previous mark with the template at the top, and then we matched the angle all the way down, and we took a pencil and we marked the angle on the post. And the reason we're making this mark is because it's going to allow us to drill at the same angle later on. we'll be able to visually confirm that we're on the right track. So we did this for all of the template marks at the top and had it go all the way down and then match the angles and then scribed it with the pencil there. So this is not the best explanation. I'm hoping what this will do is it will at least get your kind of creative juices flowing for you to problem solve and do this on your own. But this actually ended up working for us. So once we had all of the angles confirmed, it was time to do the drilling. And here's a quick look at the marks that we're going to be referencing when we drill. So what I'm doing there, taking the speed square and I'm marking basically exactly where it's going to come through. So I'm following that angle from the mark on the front, following it down, and then scribing it on the opposite side. And then what he's doing right there is he's looking at that angle and making sure that we're on a pretty similar path going through. And this is where drilling on one side and then the other side is really going to pay off, because if you're slightly off, you can make up for it in the middle of the post. So there I am starting at the top where I mark with the template, and then based on that line that we scribed, I'm drilling at that angle. My brother's over there basically just confirming that I'm on the right track, and then I switched over to the opposite side and then matched up the angle going obviously upwards this time and then meeting in the middle. So this was a little bit cumbersome, and what you'll notice is we actually had to terminate 2 of the wires at the bottom because following the angle, it would have actually interfered with the steps. But this is all just part of the problem solving. And I hope it just gives you some ideas to do this on your own. So once we did the drilling for the top half of the stairs, we moved on to the bottom. Again, scribing over, making sure that we're following that angle. And then it really does help to have a spotter for this, just to make sure that you're on the right track and that when you actually drill everything through, that it's gonna line up and it's gonna be a clean look and a clean installation. And finally, here's a quick reminder at what he's looking at on the side so that we can make sure that we have our drill at the correct angle. Sorry it's confusing. Hopefully you understand kind of the theory behind it, but just wanted to show it in case it might help somebody out. So at this point, we can finally start installing the cable and all the hardware. So I'll have links to all these tools in the description, but basically we have 1/8 inch Type 316 stainless steel cable, and then on my left hand there, we have the Mizuta hardware set. And then what you're gonna need to do is just insert the cable into the hardware, and then you're gonna use a crimping tool to crimp down on the hardware in 2 locations to prevent the wire/cable from slipping out in the future. So it's pretty simple. Once you have it crimped down, then you'll just go on the opposite side of the post and you'll tighten down the nut, and then you'll put the decorative cap on like I'm showing right there. Super simple, let's make it happen. So my brother spent, I think, 6 hours rigging up this spool, but it actually worked out, and he was able to use that to kind of pull the wire through pretty quickly all the way around. So here's just a quick view of him running that cable all the way through the post, going one by one. You'll see a little bit of tape on the end of the wire there. That just helped it to go through the post a little bit easier. And then we just continue to run it all the way through. In the corner there, we were able to run it through straight and then straight again, so that's where the 2 posts comes in handy. So don't be too worried about the length of the cable now, just have a lot of extra slack. And then you're gonna go ahead, like we talked about inside, and you're gonna take the hardware, you're gonna insert it into the post, you're gonna insert the stainless steel cable inside, make sure that it's all the way in the back of the hardware, and then you're gonna go ahead and you're gonna use your crimping tool to crimp down on the hardware in 2 locations. So doing one towards the back, and it actually took a little bit of muscle to do this. After doing this, 40, 50 times, a little bit sore, but you'll do one in the back there, you can see it crimped, and then you'll do another crimp towards the front. And you just want to do it in 2 places just for redundancy so that the likelihood of the cable ever slipping out is pretty much 0. So I bent it a little bit here by just using too much force, but you're able to fix that out later just by using some pliers. And then if you can't get the hardware all the way through, you can use pliers and a hammer to kind of force it through. Then on the other side, go ahead and insert your nut there. I think I actually forgot to install a washer, so definitely check that out on your installation. That might have been my bad. And then we just did this for all of them towards the end of one run of the cable. So we did this with all of them, and then we went all the way around to the other side. And again, you're gonna have a little bit of slack here, and then you're actually gonna have to pay attention and cut them on the other side. So here I am taking the end of the run, and then what we did is we cut them flush with the inside of the post, and then we simply took our hardware, we inserted it into the post, took our stainless steel cable, fed it into the hardware, and then when it was all the way into the back of the hardware, we would crimp it twice. Once there on the back side, once we had that tight, we'll go ahead and move on to the front and crimp it for the second time. But this is really just a redundant process. I wanted to show both sides and just give you a good illustration of what we did, so you can do the same, and then you can force it in with the pliers there, and then you'll just feed on your nut on the opposite side to keep it from, obviously coming loose. So cut each wire to length on the inside of the post as you're seeing there, insert the hardware as we did previously, take the cable, put it into the hardware, crimp it down in the 2 locations, once in the back and then moving on to crimp it in the front. And we repeated this for every single cable. Again, it's pretty redundant, and I actually bent this in a couple locations, which I had to correct with the pliers later on, but then you'll go ahead and you'll feed on the nut in the back, and you can do the additional tightening by holding one side with pliers and using a socket wrench to tighten it to your liking. And you can always adjust the tension later on by holding it with pliers on one side and then tightening it with a socket wrench. Now, you're gonna have a little bit of excess threading of the hardware on one side. So what I did is I would thread a second bolt on to establish my spacing and to give my blade something to rest against. And then I would use a reciprocating saw with a metal blade to go through and actually cut off the excess for each of the bolts. And then once it's cut, you can use the threading to kind of reestablish the threads and make sure they're in good shape. And then you'll just remove it from the one spot and you'll put it on the next one and continue your cut. And it's going to be nice to reestablish that thread with that nut that you already threaded on for when you put the decorative nut to go on the back. Trust me, I think this works out. I think it's a good strategy, and you can also do some fine tuning as you just saw with the pliers and the socket wrench to do any additional tightening at that point. Here I am straightening out all the hardware that I bent previously, and at this point, we're getting to the home stretch. Here's a quick close-up of me installing the decorative nuts on the end of the threads there, and then and we just did that all the way down for all of them. So at this point, we moved on to the other side. You can see I jacked up the post there a little bit. I'm gonna have to do some touch-up paint, but I went and I cut off the excess on the other side and then fed on the decorative nuts there. Again, I'm gonna need to do some painting, which sucks, but hey, it is what it is. So at this point, you know how to install a DIY wire/cable railing, and we basically completed that one full run on the opposite side. But what I am showing you here is just, again, a recap of how we did it for this small run for the stairs there, which really is just a stair run, and then a couple feet at the top of the landing. So again, we crimped down the one side of the stairs, fed all of the cable through, cut it to length on the inside of the post there. You can see there, he actually needs a little bit of muscle to cut through that. But the cutter actually came with the cable that we bought, and I'll leave a link to all of that in the description. And here we are just going through and crimping everything. My brother was super helpful here. He was able to crimp it while I held it, and we switched off to kind of break up the mundaneness, if you will, of the crimping. So once everything was crimped, we went on the other side and we established the nut, and then we would go through and we would tighten it up by holding one side with pliers, tightening the other side with the socket wrench to get our tension right, and then we would go back and put on the decorative caps as you're seeing now. Now finally, here's a recap of what it looked like before we started, and here's where we're at now. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy this type of content, please consider dropping a like down below and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more DIY content like this. Thanks again.